Today on Overwatch This, we talk about the latest PTR and where it's disappeared to, buffs and nerfs within it, and the server browser and its implications for the game in the years to come. Hello everybody and welcome to Overwatch This episode 18. Ben and I are here again.
We're actually
as real
people
now.
Yeah.
So we're going to kick off today's show talking about the weird disappearing PTR. So we had a PTR, 1.8 for a couple of hours, and now we don't.
Yeah, it's gone down. So they put it up. There's loads of changes in it, which we're just about to talk about, buffs and nerfs and a huge new feature. And then they took it down again because of instability, is all they said.
Right.
We think it has something to do with the new server browser, probably, because that's a really complicated set of, new...
So we'll come to the server browser, but
yeah.
what we'll talk about is what we spotted before it went down, which is a bunch of, as ever, buffs and nerfs to some characters, primarily Bastion.
Yeah, so he's getting the big set of buffs and nerfs. They talked about it on the forums a little bit like a couple of weeks ago. They said, we're thinking about doing this sort of thing, and they've implemented those mostly. Basically, they're trying to move some of the power out of the sentry mode, where he's this turret, and he's pretty hard to kill. He puts out a lot of damage, and they're trying to move some of that into his recon mode, which is when he's actually moving around. Basically, because it's very difficult to balance a character that just sits in one place and puts out damage. Either he's going to be useless, or he's going to be just way too strong.
Right.
Which is why he's had so many balance changes over, for example, the course of the beta. They got him to a point where he was fine, but not used in competitive, not particularly useful at high levels. And still a little bit frustrating for newer players.
Right.
And now they're like, right, let's try and fix that by basically moving a bunch of power from the sentry mode into the recon mode.
Is that going to be well received, do we think?
So people that like Bastion as he was were obviously like, this isn't really for me, but people think it will be better over the long term.
Right.
So basically what they've done is the sentry mode now is a lot worse at killing people.
Right.
It has a much higher bullet spread. It starts at a much higher bullet spread, and it doesn't increase. It just, it's just now kind of goes everywhere like some sort of super long range shotgun type deal. And it doesn't crit people when it hits them in the head. It doesn't have any kind of headshot type deal.
Right.
The same damage is put out, but it's over a much bigger spread. So basically, you can use it to bust a Reinhardt shield, or to take out maybe if Zarya's put shields on a couple of people and you just want to kill them rather than worrying about her charge, or if you're just trying to hold down a choke point of some sort. You can put a lot of damage into that area, but you're not just going to be able to pick people off as they come around a corner or that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then what they've done to mitigate that is they've made his recon gun a lot better. They've made it so he can heal while he's moving around the map. He doesn't have to stand still to do that. It doesn't get interrupted by damage anymore.
Right.
He can't shoot and heal at the same time, because that would probably be pretty powerful. And he does have access to the heal while he's in sentry mode, so he would then be a pretty unkillable beast.
Yeah.
So they're kind of turning into it's a lot like Soldier 76 when he's in recon mode, basically. Like a Soldier 76 that doesn't have as much burst,
Right.
because he doesn't have the right click like the missiles that Soldier 76 has. But he can move around the map while healing. He can shoot quite accurately with a submachine gun at reasonable range.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting change.
It's a fairly notable change there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other main characters who've been changed from what we see or what we know are Diva and Mercy, right?
Yeah, so
and you're calling these minor but important.
Yes. So Diva's defense matrix got a really small, what sounds like a really small change, where previously projectiles fired had to move a certain distance before her defense matrix would notice they were there and delete them.
Right.
So say I was right next to you and I was Roadhog and I shot you, but defense matrix was over you. The defense matrix wouldn't delete the projectiles before they hit you, because the projectiles would move far enough to hit you, but not far enough that the defense matrix went, oh, there they are, and deleted them.
Yeah.
Whether that was a bug or a deliberate balance change, they're calling this a balance change, but whether that was some kind of technical thing that they only worked out to fix, we don't know. But what it should mean is, for example, if you get hooked by a Roadhog, this was the example they used, you won't just die if there's a defense matrix over you, because his bullets will be deleted as soon as they leave the gun.
Right.
So no matter how close you are, unless there's some sort of bug, obviously, they'll get deleted and they won't hit you.
That sounds like a tough thing to code, to be honest.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I expect the reason they put in that little bit was probably, to get around some coding problems.
Yeah.
And then they realised, this is actually having an impact on how people feel like it should work. Because if you have the defense matrix over you, you're meant to be invulnerable.
Sure.
So other places it should help is it should help her particularly, when she's trying to get away, backpedaling, and if someone's right in her face, she won't be getting hit. It should help protect, different kind of things. Say, they always talk about how they like to see divas protecting Junkrat tires, for example. If you're right next to the Junkrat tire, she wouldn't have been able to do that anyway.
Right.
now she can. Exactly how much impact it'll have, I would hope that we'll see it used a couple of times, and it should be really interesting. And it should make D.Va players feel a lot better.
Sure.
And like in terms of like making players feel better, that's kind of what the Mercy change is about as well.
Right. Okay.
Where she's now going to be invulnerable while she's resurrecting people, which means she won't just always die whenever she goes in for like a big 4-man
that seems like a good idea. To be honest.
And so that is a pretty big balance change because she'll then be around to keep the team up, keep them putting out damage and stuff. Right? Yeah, exactly. And it also just, it removes that feel bad moment where you're like, well, I can save my team, but I'll die.
I'll definitely
and
die,
then I'm not playing the game for 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
When you say it like that, it sounds pretty minor, but when you're playing the game, you want to be playing the game, you don't want to be sacrificing your playtime, even if it's for the good of the team. That just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So both of those changes, they sound really small. They are mostly they feel like quality of life changes, but also they might have big balance implications.
And then there's a few other minor bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah, so there's a kind of a big, broad change to the way the sensitivity works when you're targeting allies or enemies with stuff that can target like any ally or enemy, like say a Zenyatta heal or Anna's nano boost is the one that it's biggest for.
Right.
And they've made it so you can tweak the sensitivity of how that works, like how close to the center of a character you need to be before it auto-targets someone else.
That's a good idea.
And basically the reason for this is because Anna's would keep accidentally nano-boosting Lucio's on their team, which is great for Lucio. I'm sure he's having a wonderful time.
Sure.
But if you're doing that instead of hitting the Reinhardt, who's then going to kill 4 people if you do it.
That's slightly pointless.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And obviously, that's another feel-bad moment. So they're doing that to like all sorts of things. They're doing it with Sombra's hack as well, so that you make sure you're hacking the right target, or you're hacking a heal pack instead of an enemy, if you want to be doing that. There's also some small changes to Eichenwald. They're making it so like getting into the actual building near the end of the map is a lot less frustrating for the attacking team once they've pushed the payload a certain distance.
How are they doing that?
They're like, instead of these doors closing, some rubble blocks a little bit of them, so you can still kind of get over them. It's not as simple as just running through.
Okay.
But any maneuverability tools actually help you rather than you having to go around the sides.
Sure.
Basically, instead of there being 2 very small choke points, there's now like 3, and one of them's quite a bit bigger.
Right.
So it should be a lot less just really annoying to try and get through a certain amount of enemy fire.
Right.
Probably not something that's going to impact like the highest levels quite as much because the amount of teamwork you have there is impactful. But at medium levels for general players, it should be quite nice.
And this has all come up and gone down. Now we think this is to do with the server browser, which we'll come to. But the assumption being that when it comes back, this stuff will be much as it is, or as
this will all be the same. Because basically the reason they brought it down was it wasn't working, and then by the looks of things, they all went home because it was the end of the day. And they're going to fix it when they get in. They only work maybe 12 hours a day, so come on. But yeah, it looks like when they get into the office today, which should be by the time this video goes up, they'll get it fixed and they'll get all this up, and it should all be the way it is. The last thing, and this is very small, is somebody found a model on the PTR that is where Doomfist Gauntlet is on Numbani, inside the payload. There is now a broken version of the glass for the payload. So basically, get ready for another 6-month arc.
Okay, so the second part of the PTR, and the reason we think it has gone down, if it's not back up already, which it probably is the server browser, right? So that is potentially quite a big change, an unstable change, it would seem, but they'll get it fixed soon. But this could shake up quite a lot of things in terms of people's ability to play Overwatch, how they want to play Overwatch.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird to talk about it as such a new thing because, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, this was how games were played, but then matchmaking came along, people prefer to play at their own skill levels.
Yeah, and I suppose it's an ease thing, right? You could just go play.
Yeah, and you just use hit play rather than worrying about this sort of thing. But yeah, so they're adding a server browser. You'll be able to go into Overwatch and say, oh, okay, I want to run 1v1 games today, and you can host your own 1v1 games. They can be public, or you can make them friends only, or you can make them invite only. Or you can go in and you can say, oh, I just want to play Control today. And then you look through the server browser and, here's a dozen server Control games that you can pick what to play on. You can say, I only want to play on this map, etc. So that's really cool. And that's very standard for a few years ago. That's what you would expect.
It makes me feel old because when I was growing up playing games, that was the only way to play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you had like the 2 servers you really like playing on, the Hampshire Heavies TF2 server
it's weird
or whatever.
Thinking of this as like, a new thing for a new game because that's just the way it is. It isn't anyway. But yes,
so there's kind of that half of it, and then there's this kind of other thing where what they've basically built in with it is a whole mod making type deal, where you can decide what heroes are legal. You can also change those heroes. You can decide, okay, let's play a game where we're all only McCree, and the combat roll has no cooldown, and so everyone can just roll everywhere, and you kind of got effectively infinite ammo. etc., that sort of thing. You could also change the base stats of those heroes. So the example that Jeff uses in his video is you could make a game mode where one team is like a super-powered Roadhog with loads of HP, and then the other team is a bunch of heroes with 50 HP each, or something like that.
Really, really malleable then. Like the stuff
exactly.
you can change is sort of everything.
Yeah,
and that's where it's exciting, really.
Exactly, yeah. And with it being down, we don't know what the limitations on that are. For example, like there's no actual map making in here. There's no model changing in here.
No.
But as far as we know, you can change basically any stat you can think of: cooldown times, HP values, damage values, etc., etc. Once it comes back up, it's going to be really exciting to see what people do with it.
It's pretty mad because, like you say, there's no map making, but there is mode making. And as much as you say, you could have really asymmetrical teams intentionally, but find a great balance between, I don't know, 3 character X, 3 character Y, and 2 of so and so with super buff stats on the other side. And people will quickly come across really exciting and really innovative ways to play because that's what people do. And it's a bit like when Hitman gave people contracts mode, and it went, well, these are the tools the game has. We're not letting you like make the new thing, but how you put that together is what will kind of let it live on. And then the user created content pool just expands massively.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a lot of the Warcraft 3 map maker. Now, obviously, that was a map maker that let you design that sort of stuff, and you also had access to being able to change models around and that sort of thing. But this is a limited version of that with all the really interesting bits of that, which was, being able to edit items and make different kind of stats and that sort of thing. So, what people might create out of this is going to be really interesting. Dota came out of the Warcraft 3 map maker. That's quite a big deal. That turned into, a whole multinational genre. And while this is smaller and may expand in the future, what we'll see for Overwatch is, people can do their own balancing. They can say, all right, I think this game would be better if D.Va had 50 more health. Or I think this game would be better if Zenyatta did this much damage or whatever. And people can make those changes themselves, test them with their friends. They can create testing teams, or you can just host this stuff publicly. What's gonna happen, like almost inevitably, is some site will set up like, okay, we run these 5 servers, we run them all the time, they have these balance changes, we test them as we want to, and we're trying to make a pro version of Overwatch that we think would be better for the pro scene.
That's the thing, it's quite a bold move to give players this much
power,
control, especially at a time when something like the Overwatch League is just in its formation. They're trying to almost standardise competitive play in Overwatch and make it an organisation in and of itself. This potentially, loads of people go, oh, actually, we all prefer playing it like these guys are hosting it on their server.
Yeah.
Like, it's quite a bold
thing.
What
they really don't want to do, or what they've always talked about not wanting to do, is have 2 different games, one of which is like the pro version and one of which is
may well
like
lead
the non-pro
into that.
version. Yeah, it could. Because pros, players will just play what they want to. They're not going to care that maybe it's not good for the long-term health of the game. If there's 10,000 people and they all decide, no, this version of the game is better, and they also are all the best players at the game, that's what they're going to want to play. Now, you can help that with, stuff like prize money and hosting tournaments and all the rest of it, but they're going to have to listen to those people because they're going to be the people that matter, particularly if the Overwatch League goes the way they want it to and becomes this whole kind of global franchise.
So, yeah, like you say, I mean, obviously the pro scene will be affected maybe down the line. For now, it won't be because the tournaments are the tournaments, but it could sway the general player base quite quickly. Yeah. How quickly do we think this is going to come public?
So,
normally with PTR we can make an educated guess. If it's breaking the PTR, it feels like the rollout might have to be a bit more.
It might be a bit slower. It looks like this is meant to be the end of kind of February, start of March patch. I wouldn't expect it to take longer than the end of March, even if they've got really big problems. What they can do as well is deploy like the balance bits of this patch, and they could just leave the server browser as a PTR only thing. They could do that. So it could be 6 months if it's as problematic as this is maybe implying. I doubt it. They wouldn't have put it on the PTR yet if it was that much of a problem. I would expect it will come up today. It's probably already up by the time you're watching this video, and it will probably go out as we would expect, maybe a week later than normal.
Right.
And then at that point, the floodgates open. There are 25 million people who now have access to this game. This is going to go onto console as well. It's not a PC only thing.
Right.
So, whatever percentage of the player base is going to be able to mess with it as well. That's a whole other thing. Like, are they going to create a console version of Overwatch that plays a lot better, but is significantly different? Another thing that Blizzard have said they're trying to avoid. So, I would expect we'll start seeing like stuff come out of this by April, May. And, then the sky's the limit. Someone could create something great within the first couple of months, or in 3 years, someone might just go, oh, I play it like this. And everyone goes, Oh wow, okay. You know, so yeah.
Okay, well that's pretty much it for this week. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the video. Give us a like, a comment, a subscribe, hit the bell. The bell is crucial these days, apparently. Please join us next week where we will be back talking about, hopefully, the PTR that's returned, the server browser. I'm sure we'll talk about that more, and also the return of the pro scene in 2017.